All right, we are live. Welcome everybody back to another episode of Let's Talk Lake County. I'm your host David Rich. I am a cat sitting out in Lake Bluff, so if you don't recognize the background, that's why. We have a special guest on, a recurring guest on my this show and my radio show from before, Esiah Campos, who is a Lake County board member. Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got some.
Again, again.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you for coming on. I love. It's nice to have contacts, kind of like go-tos in these different areas of like county-wide politics and stuff like that. So I can you can tell us what the Lake County Board has been doing lately and that kind of thing, because people are interested in that kind of thing. There are a couple of specific questions I have for later, but why don't you just kind of give us a general update of what's going on there and with your run for the next election?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's. I'll just start off by let's not focus on up here. There was a slight leak on, so the panels. I'm in my basement right now, so the
Oh, okay. I thought you were
so the
being
pan-
metaphorical. You're
no,
like, don't focus on like
so
the high intellectual stuff. I'm like, what? Okay.
there was a slight leak with the washing machine, so that's the result of it. So we're getting that fixed. But no, the Lake County Board has been good. We have there was one of the pivotal votes was sometime in February where they were thinking about doing an increase to the land fees, for the permits. What they wanted to do was increase the permit costs for what we charge for permits, and we looked at how much surrounding villages within Lake County charge, and how does that affect development and whatnot. But majority of the board, it was a vote for 11-8. Majority of the board felt that it was needed some more work done, and we sent it back to committee. I was very vocal against it, as it doesn't have any incentives for affordable housing, and I'm a big proponent of affordable housing. I understand that there needs to be something done with these permits, but I don't think all of these permits that we do, and we should, before I put my foot in my mouth, we should do some more digging on if some of these permits are redundant, right? If we're spending manpower, if we're spending taxpayer dollars enforcing some of these permits that are redundant, out of date, could be updated, could be done more efficiently, etc. So I think the board saw that, and it was a bipartisan effort to get it back to committee, and so now it is back in committee. So,
And these are the cost of permits for building.
For building, for residential improvements, such as fencing, you want to.
Oh, so it's pretty much anything having to do with,
Right.
So it's
Right.
not necessarily like a house from scratch. It could be a renovation. It could be.
Yeah, it could be you want to put a fence up, you want to build a shed, you want to, whichever. One of the biggest gripes that I have about the way that the board was going to push this through was that it goes up with inflation, every single year, and it continues to go up. It's on an upward scale of continuing to charge more every single year. To me, that felt as though the permit facility has its own revenue stream now, is now built in revenue stream, so it's not beholden to the board. It doesn't need to come back to the board and say, hey, we need to raise it, and there's little input. There's one input this year, and then for however long it's going to go, they don't need any input from the board. And I think we were elected to make these decisions. I don't think we should just have them on all these decisions on autopilot. So that was another big reason why I wanted to go back to committee.
Okay, that's very interesting. I mean, yeah. Okay, so let's say I'll be back on later after it gets out of committee and you guys vote on it, because that's interesting. Because as far as see, what is it, like a 3% raise every year, like automatically? Is that what you're speaking to?
Yeah, so it was almost a 20% raise just right out the gate. So some of the permits were going to go up, and when we say 20%, it could be $10, and then so therefore now it's
Sure.
going to cost 20, right? So it kind of sounds scary, but when you're looking at a big number, especially for affordable housing, like $5,000 for land fee, right, or surveying, whichever it is, that's a huge increase, and that's a huge disincentive for affordable housing developers to come and build affordable housing, right? Because it needs to be that affordable, right? Um, but not only that, when they do build, let's say they do build an affordable home, these permit fee increases just get pushed onto the consumer, right? The end consumer. So developer will come, pay what they need to pay, make the product, and then just sell it for higher so they can get their money back, right? So it at the end of the day, it hurts the end consumer, and we need to find a way to massage that so that it does not hurt the end consumer, and that we do two birds with one stone. We incentivize affordable housing, we don't hinder it, and we also don't hurt the end user.
That's interesting. Yeah, no, I'm very curious to see what happens with this for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, affordable housing is extremely important. I know a lot of people don't like it, or some people. I shouldn't say a lot. I think most people are fine with it.
Yeah,
It's extremely important that people have a place to live. People in tough times. I mean, they probably have kids most often, that kind of thing. And if you don't supply affordable housing, you increase the homeless population, and that's not desirable for anybody.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I've been
So
working really closely with the Realtors Association regarding this, and they've been really, really. I mean, they've just been so knowledgeable. Obviously, they're an entire association dedicated to housing needs and whatnot, and also to the realtors, and they know their business. And so, one of the things that was taught to me that didn't really dawn on me until we got into this permitting fight. Another thing that hinders affordable housing, um, not just within the county, but also within the municipalities within the county,
Mhm,
because the board doesn't have jurisdiction over what Mundelein does, what
mhm,
Round Lake,
mhm.
whichever, right? Um, but there's a game that a lot of these developers play, and what they do is when they come to develop a house, let's say they want to not a house, a building, an apartment building, right? They get zoning, and they're starting to break ground, with the caveat that 10%, 5%, 20%, whichever of the units are going to be affordable housing. They're going to be below market rates, right? But they're going to charge the 80% the market rate, right? Um, uh, so that they can satisfy that affordable housing quota. It's in the developer's interest um, to pay the fines if they don't do that, right? If let's say Mundelein, I don't believe Mundelein does, but if Mundelein has every 20% of our homes in Mundelein needs to be affordable housing, and then I'm a developer, I come and I develop a 20 units, right? Just keep it easy math. Two of those need to be below market, right? Well, I'd rather pay the fine and then recoup my money by selling those two apartments at market value, and then I'm going to recoup my money. And I mean, Mundelein is okay with it because now it's another revenue source um, for the municipality. It's a $200,000 fine, $100,000 fine, whichever it is. Now it's $100,000 they can use that they didn't need to tax the taxpayer for, right? And so it's a game that these developers play, um, but that is another issue aside from the land permit fees and whatnot. But it's interesting that the realtors educated me on that, and it is a systemic problem because it's hard to get affordable housing developers in to Lake County, and when they do, there are still some legal games that they can play.
Sure. No,
Yeah.
I could imagine. Well, okay, really cool. Yeah, again, let's have you back on later after this is all resolved and tell us what's going on. Okay, but speaking of money, You guys just passed some kind of a budget, I guess, and there are a couple people asked when I was mentioning that you were going to be on. They were talking about a couple of things. There was correct me if I'm wrong, but an $800,000 allocation to gambling addiction. So I have that
Mhm,
right? Okay.
mhm.
Did you want to speak to that? There was no, they weren't criticized. They were just curious, like, what does that entail? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah. So there's no what. Okay, so there's no. It's no surprise that a lot of people like to gamble, right? We also have the casino. We have
Yeah, no,
these
for sure.
slot machines and whatnot, right? So that's allowed within the state, and when people go and they gamble, whenever you have a proponent of gambling establishments or want to increase gambling establishments, whatnot, restaurants want to put a machine in their they always make the argument that, well, this is going to bring tax revenue to the county, to Round Lake, to whichever, right?
Right.
It's going to bring more tax dollars. Well, yes and no. So yes, it does. We do tax the vices, right? Liquor, tobacco, gambling, right? But that money is earmarked. It doesn't go to your roads, right? We're not using that money to build roads. We're not using that money to build affordable housing. We're not using that money to. It's earmarked. The money that we make from the vices go to treatment of those vices, and that's a big shocker to some people, right? The proponents always say we're going to build more roads, better schools, whichever it is, right? But it's actually not. We allocate money to nonprofits, and Lake County Health Department has some programs that help gambling addiction, right? Um, and so a lot of that money is earmarked to it's like a vicious cycle. It's
Right.
weird. So more gamblers means more money for more treatment, and the success of those treatments is having less gamblers and less money, right? And so then it's just feeding it. It's the
Yeah, that's an
beast feeding
interesting
itself.
yeah, it's an interesting
Yeah.
cycle. That I can think of, like, if I don't know if this is the case, but for example, like if like some of the money from cigarette companies has to go to like getting programs for people to quit smoking, like something like
Yeah.
that. Like that's a bit ironic. Okay, like
Yeah.
so, but
It's
okay,
almost
but I
like
mean,
it's almost like have you ever seen that image of the snake
yeah,
eating itself?
or
Yeah.
Orovos, it's so called. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, interesting. But I mean, okay. I mean, it's hard to like argue against people that are addicted to anything. So I mean, okay. I mean, yeah, it's a strange little loop that exists there, but for sure. But okay, okay.
yeah.
That people were just wondering. Well, is there? Do you hear about a high demand? I mean, do you get like people saying, Ouroboros? Yes, Ouroboros. Thank you, Alexandria. Um, I mean, do you have a lot of people calling is whatever phone numbers and stuff saying, hey, I'm a gambling addict and I need help?
Yeah, I mean, you would have to ask these specific nonprofits that do deal with it,
Oh,
like
okay.
ASDA, which are not, and uh, have we seen an increase? And the answer is yes. So whenever we were looking at doing these things, we don't just willy nilly spend money, right? We look at the data, staff comes to us, and then we're like, wow, there's an increase in
Oh, okay.
gamblers, there's an increase in requests to these programs. They're becoming more popular because gambling is becoming more popular, right? And so, like I said, it's a vicious cycle. So yes, unfortunately, there is people that are just at their last, just like people who are done drinking, right? They're like, I got to go to an AA meeting, right? There are people with the gambling addictions, and they do call that
Yeah.
number, and they're like, listen, I'm standing at the in the parking lot of the casino, or wherever, and but a lot of this is habit building, right? A lot of it is, I get off work, I got nothing to do, I go down to my local restaurant, and I put $20, and $2,000 later, right? It's a problem for me, right? And so it's hard to and what those programs do is it gives them a way to change that habit. It's to change that uh, that daily routine, that daily habit, and take it out of there. And so, yeah, the more it's the data shows, the more gambling establishments there are, the more need and more expensive these programs are costing us.
Well, I would imagine, yeah, there's got to be some sort of ratio between the two.
Yeah.
So okay, well, that's very interesting. All right, so there was something else somebody brought. It was a couple of people asked me about concerning the raises within the new budget. As far as I understand, and again, correct me if I'm wrong. There was a 5%. It was a 16-0 vote with 2 abstentions. I think I read, and again, correct me if I'm wrong. There was a 5% raise granted to like certain full-time countywide employees. But then there was one that was granted to Patrice Sutton. So 20% raise. She is the Lake County administrator, right? And then a couple of people were like definitely curious about that. So if you could explain, talk us through that, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I want to stay away from and apologize if this
No,
is
it's okay.
a direct question. I want to stay away from either criticizing or promoting a individual's salary.
Okay.
Talking specifically about Patrice Sutton, she does an
Right.
amazing job, and she's almost like Cat in the Hat, where you see all those. She's trying to balance
Right.
the ball and
Right.
standing on the ball and balancing the tray. She does a lot, right? Whether
Mhm.
and she's wearing a lot of hats.
Mhm.
I think the administrator is that's just the nature of the administrator, right? So I would say at that. I know some of the countywides definitely deserve a raise. They definitely deserve. It's a full-time position. Some of these countywides, or all of these countywides, I shouldn't say some. We got Holly, Vega, Aaron. They're basically department heads, elected department heads, right?
Yeah.
And they are carrying departments. They're carrying portions of our government to make our government function, and they haven't seen a increase in their wages. And just to mind you, 3%, you lose 3% of your purchasing power every single year just due to inflation, right? No matter who's in the Oval Office or not, you will lose 3% every single year.
Yeah, no, that's well, I remember working for a union out in Portland. We were guaranteed a 3% raise every year to keep
Yeah.
up with inflation specifically.
Yep.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, we definitely look at raises. There's always that catch-22 because I mean I'm in the union and I love the union and we fight for wages up and down the board, right, every single time. And so I'm always championing we need to pay our people more. We need to pay our people more. And it's a different type of business being in government, right? Because we need to pay our people more. I'm advocating for increase my taxes, right? And then I'm on the campaign trail. I'm going to help your taxes. I'm going to help your taxes. So it's a hard balance to balance that messaging and not only delivering that for the taxpayers as well as having the best staff. But yeah, I mean, the inflation has disproportionately hurt our lower workers. Our non-managerial staff, right? Our non-managerial staff as well as our upper echelon staff. The everyday teller, the everyday Lake County health employee, a lot of this stuff is broken, and we need to find a way to make government more efficient while also providing the best, most competitive wages.
Right.
And
that's a tough one.
I am not aware of any government who has successfully done that.
Right. That's, I mean, because efficiency is the least amount of input with the greatest amount of output. So when you're increasing wages, you're increasing input. you're not decreasing it to get greater output. So you're automatically fighting against at least the essence of what it counts as efficiency. No, I get it. So then you got to kind of find some sort of proportion that works best. That's
Yeah.
the other mathematical way to do it. So that would be a tough one. Sure.
Hopefully, I answered your question. Hopefully, I answered
No,
your
you
question.
did. So like, real quick though, like, so the 5% raise for the county, that was for the Holly Kims and Vegas and Cartwrights, and was it for their staffs too, or no,
Uh,
just for them, or is that up to them to allocate?
So part of it, so it's not they're just going to go up, right? So again, with inflation, everything becomes more expensive, and to run these different departments, right?
Right.
Paper,
Yes. No, 100%.
pencils
Yeah.
cost more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh,
Right.
so they definitely we allocate a little bit more every single year, and we're finally starting to do that where we kept the levy flat for a lot of this time, and a lot of ask Holly herself. Ask Holly. She has had to do some funny stuff to keep within the budget, right? Like uh, she and I don't mean messing with the numbers. I'm trying to give like a specific detail. Like she has more than expanded the outreach, and more than expanded the efficiency of that department while staying within the budget. But something just had to give at some point, right?
Yeah.
And all of the countywides have done that. And we're starting to see where those failures from the board have came from. Definitely was before I came on the board. I'm a huge proponent of getting our people what they need, but
Yeah.
when it's extravagant, right? I'm the first one to be like, no, we're not doing
No,
this.
no, it's not happening. You don't get to hold a circus,
Yeah.
in the parking lot. Okay, well, that's very cool. I mean, that sounds very prudent. So okay, cool. Well, thank you for the updates on the county board. What about talk about your campaign? What's going on? You just kicking it off now?
Yeah, so I'm kicking it off now. I'm starting early. I'm having a buff. So I love if you know me personally, I love baseball. Yes,
Yes.
football, basketball, that's all great, but I love baseball. I grew up playing baseball with my
Mhm.
friends. I broke a window or two. We won't talk about that. But I love baseball, and so when I have the ability, you know, to give back and put a little bit of me inside of some of these fundraisers. So I'm having a watch party for the Cubs and Sox on July 26th, Saturday, from 6 to 10. At Buffalo Wild Wings, again, one of my favorite restaurants.
Yeah, a lot
um,
of TVs.
a lot of TVs. So it's going to be fun watching the baseball game with a lot of good people, a lot of good conversation, and then it was kind of fun because the tagline is I want to say because we're battling for democracy, right?
Right.
Well, it's also baseball, so it's batting for democracy. It's cool. It's
Hey, all right.
a little nerdy
No,
play on
it's
words.
catchy. People, it's there's some cleverness there.
Yeah.
So okay, well, that's very cool. Yeah, and like I said, I first thought I couldn't make it, but I would like to go. So resend me that
Yeah, I
email.
appreciate it.
So,
Yeah,
yeah, for
but it's
sure.
definitely it is kind of daunting going into the way this federal government is acting, as well as just how visceral uh, some of the politics is in not only the nation but also within the local party, right? Um, a lot of this. So in 2026, depending whatever side of the aisle you're on, it is going to be an expensive race. It is going to
Huh.
be so expensive. We're starting this, at least me. I'm looking at how much these mailers are going to cost, as well as um, uh, the postage is going to be going up substantially. Um, it's going to be very expensive, and a lot of these local races are going to um, find out at the last minute. And maybe I'm just saying, being the sky's falling kind of guy, where when you could run a local race for $5,000 out of your pocket, it is now going to be upwards of 10 to 15 to run an actual campaign. And it's going to hurt a lot of good people who could run. And therefore, if you have the money, you're going to be able to run. So hence why starting early, hence why getting the grassroots ready, doing the things that need to be done. But yeah, I really 2026, however it goes for whichever party, is going to be one of the most consequential elections in I would say this decade. I know we said it about 2024. I know we said it about 2022, but every single election is just more and more. And the Democratic Party has a lot to look forward to going into 2026. A lot of people are turned off by the overreaches of power, as well as the just visceral reactions to a lot of, these inhumane, some of these things that are happening. And we don't have to look far to see how it's affecting us. Monies that we secured in the budget that allocated to infrastructure projects here in Lake County, is now off the table, right? Because of the freeze, because of the reversal and taking it out of the budget for this year. It affects every single one of us in Lake County. A lot of these infrastructure projects are just not going to come to fruition. I have two big ones in my district that when I ran because Round Lake was forgotten. A lot of the projects was majority on the east side of the county, right? And my two predecessors, because my district is a combination of two, they fought and they fought and they fought. And a lot of the infrastructure, some of the infrastructure bills, such as like the roundabout that we got, some sewer money that we got, but it wasn't enough, right? And I'm not saying what they did wasn't enough. I'm just saying proportional to the other side of the county, the western part did not get a lot of the investments, and we seem to have changed that. And one of the two big projects that my district really needed was the Rollins Road project and the Cedar Lake Road realignment. If you live within my district, you know how crazy that Cedar Lake Road is. Going over that train tracks to these four-way stop, it's and you go to any other municipality, they don't have that, right? It's super outdated. So we have the Cedar Lake Road realignment to update the downtown, and it was create a really beautiful downtown. And you had Brian on, the new mayor of Round Lake, on about a week ago, I think. And that is a big priority of his, and hence why me and him have worked together even before he became mayor. So a lot of that is taken off of the table, and it's a huge detriment to the constituents that I represent, with no other fault other than he could do it, right? He being the president, right? Only because they can do it, right? And there's a lot of negative impact that this county is going to feel, not just my district.
Yeah, no, it's being felt. Turns out all over the world. So yeah.
Yeah, Canada just elected their new prime minister. I see it. Huh?
Yeah, and in a great part response to what's going on here. I mean, they even said, like, he's so unpopular right now. He's even losing elections in other countries. So so we'll. I'm trying to keep the names out because I want that side of the political aisle to come on the show as well. So, but you know what I'm talking about. So but okay, go ahead.
But so it's funny you say that, but I have a lot of Republican friends.
Oh, right? So do I.
And a lot of them quietly are just like, "Yo, this
is not what we signed up for.
This is not what we wanted." And I'm like, and it's hard to sit here and be like, we told you so, right?
Yeah, that's
You
that's
know,
not a very nice thing to say to
it,
people, but
it's right, but it's like, man, we told you so.
we told you so.
Oh my God.
Like he said he was
Yeah,
going to do it, he did it, and now it's a disaster. Like people were talking about like tariffs and stuff before the election, even, and they're like, "This is not a good idea." It never, in some
right.
very small, specific context, tariffs are a good idea, but not just on everybody always,
Yeah,
at
but
140%.
a lot of what those Republican friends that I have, what we can relate on is, yes, government is inefficient sometimes. Yes,
100%. Nobody's
government
arguing against that.
government cannot be trusted sometimes. Yes, even as a Democrat, I don't want the federal government snooping around my school, snooping around my house. I want
Right,
snooping on my phone. I don't
right,
want it, even as a
right,
Democrat,
right.
right? But this is something totally different. And
Well, 100% it is.
some of my Republican friends are like, okay, I'm starting to see. And so we're trying to, we are bridging those gaps and talking to where we haven't talked before during the campaign. Now that they're seeing, I mean, it's less than 100 days. It's less than 100 days, and we're having like kumbayas with some hardline Republicans that are like, yeah, maybe we made a mistake.
Yes, I'm getting that same vibe and response explicitly or implicitly from from a lot of people. So it's not hard to tell what's happening here and how it's just a nightmare. So okay, we'll see if the resilience of the American economy can bounce back on its own independently of this nonsense. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
See if the rich people step up and actually try to do something to help. That could help. So all right, well, great. It's been a half hour. I want to keep you. It's dinner time. You jumped off the train onto the show here. But anything else you wanted to wrap it up with?
No, other than stay safe out there. Learn to love your neighbor and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And make the world a little bit better. Make the world
Hmm.
a little bit better than when you left it.
That's why we're here. Very
All
cool.
right.
Very cool. All right, Lake County Board Member Esiah Campos, thank you, sir, for coming on the show. Everybody, thank you for tuning in to Let's Talk Lake County. I'm your host, David Rich. I got another episode coming up at 8 o'clock tonight. We've got a couple of locals who have some very strong opinions about vaccines. So stay tuned. Come back in another hour if you'd like. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. All right, thanks for tuning in, everybody. I'll see you later. Isaiah, hold on one second.